Hello, and welcome to week 2 of your course, and welcome to the module 2. Last week we discussed invention strategies and we discussed critical writing and how critical writing is essential to coming up with new ideas and inventing new ideas. So, also we read a lot, we talked about critical reading. What is critical reading? Why is it not judgment? How is it different from evaluation, and why is it necessary to becoming a good writer? So I hope you have all those ideas in mind. We discussed rhetorical tools as well, if you remember. Very important, because we'll be using all the things that we do in these weeks to sort of like get our ideas together for Unit 1 assignment. I hope you guys are ready, and I hope you really enjoy the activities and the readings for this week. Personally, I like them a lot. I have added as extra readings, or I would say, if you don't want to read and you have too much reading, just listen to the actual speeches. I have added the links for those speeches. So the first is J.K. Rowling's Harvard address. Some of you might already have heard it, so you might know what the text or the analysis is doing. And then read David Foster Wallace's commencement speech as well, or listen to it. Again, I've added links for both the written text and the speech on YouTube. Do listen to those things, because before going on, it's just 20 minutes, it's very important for an analysis or a sample analysis to make sense. In order for it to make sense, you need to be able to have first seen what the original text does. The other essay, you already have the essay in chapter 6 of it, in chapter 8 of your textbook. So that's great. You read that essay, that's part of this week's readings as well. You go over it, you thoroughly internalize it, then you see how is somebody approaching it. Now you will notice that the way the sample essay, the analysis approaches those texts is unique in their own way. You might see something completely different in those papers, right? For example, let's say when we talk about weighty matters, I think the paper that talks about what the society and the media culture is promoting about people, the image that they're promoting about people who are heavier, or who the culture terms fat. So what are the negative consequences of them? Not just psychological, but social, economical, so many things, right? So how is the analysis paper looking at the content and the rhetorical techniques in that essay? See, the author takes the purpose of the text, the first thing. The purpose, what is the author trying to do? The author is trying to, in my opinion, you can disagree, is trying to both inform and persuade the public. Inform the public about a problem that they are already aware of. It's everywhere. You must have seen the new ideas, body positive movements and all of that. But this essay tackles those issues in a slightly different manner, right? So what I would like you to see is the way the author sees, well, the purpose is information, right? And then the purpose is also persuading, because the author is not just imparting information for you to say, well, we're getting information from this and that's it. The information that you get is oriented towards making a positive change in our attitude towards how we view people who are overweight or who have put on a little weight. Why do we have the tendency of making them feel as if they have failed, or as if there is something really wrong with them? Why, as a culture, are we promoting it? And also, something that the paper and the analysis does not mention, but I would like you to mention, because I mentioned in the previous video about your first assignment, your research proposal, the importance of context. This essay is written for an American audience. You will see this because the essay talks about American culture, about American food eating habits, about American issues. So it's very, very oriented towards an American audience. So when you are thinking about what can be done with this essay, how can, let's say, if I was analyzing this text, how would I do it? You can also think about how the author is orienting her text in her rhetorical techniques towards an audience that is American. Imagine if someone who is from a completely different country is reading that essay. Would they be able to understand the culture in the same way if they are not familiar with it? The text would then lead up to many questions. So the point that I'm trying to help you understand here is that it is essential that you look at the main essay, then you look at the analysis, and then you make your own opinion about what you want to do, about how you want to approach the analysis of the rhetorical analysis that is this week's activity. So let's get into it. I have the slides open in front of me, the PowerPoint, and it would be a good idea if you have it open in front of you too. I've tried to simplify a few ideas here. Some of them are repetition of ideas from last week because again we are dealing with a similarity of topics, maybe going a little deeper into the same issues that we discussed. So this week we are going to be exploring, you will be focusing on textual and rhetorical analysis. Again, remember, critical reading is a very essential point of that, so keep that in mind. Now, we discussed layers that a text has, and that how critical reading brings out those layers. So what I have done is break it down a little bit and try to make you have a better understanding by explaining that how these layers function. So let's say if you look on the first slide, it talks about when we analyze a text, we look at what a text says. So if I ask you, well, tell me, what does Anne Marie Pauline, for example, says? You can simply then retell whatever she's saying in your own words. That is a restatement. That is not an analysis. All right. And then you ask yourself, what is the what a text does? You are describing the text. Well, the text explains the situation of how American media and the society treat people who have gained weight. And how they face difficulties on almost all spheres of human existence and why society is responsible for it. So you're now explaining what a text is doing. You're not explaining her examples and everything. You're simply explaining how the text functions as a whole. So this way, this means you're moving towards the rhetorical techniques that we discussed. What are the kind of examples that the text uses? What is the organization of the text? How does the author use facts? How does the author instill emotion? What kind of ideas does she generate? What kind of language and tone does she have? Is she informal? Is she formal? Does she develop a camaraderie or a sense of fellowship with her audience? What is she doing, right? So that is important. And lastly, what a text means. Interpretation, where we move from simply analysis, we are still doing analysis, but we move from simply looking at what the text says to the subtext, to another layer, what the text implies but does not completely mean. The author doesn't say there is something systematically wrong and crazy about the society in which we live because of the way the society treats people who are fat, but the implication is still there. So you see, we look at the phenomenon and the environment we live in with new eyes. Because of that, interpretation helps us see, wow, we have been living in this place, we have been party to this. Maybe we have looked at ourselves in the mirror and said, I need to lose weight because I want to be accepted by the society in which I live. This means we are part of the culture, we are part of the problem. I'm not saying, like her, that we shouldn't be conscious about being healthy, but being fanatic about it, and which leads to people actually ostracizing people who are overweight is very, very dangerous. And that is what she points out in the essay. And then in the sample analysis, how the author, I'm forgetting the name of the author, looks at the way Anne Marie Pauline deals with the situation, deals with the situation through her rhetoric, through her language. All right, so moving on to the next slide. I have explained the three aspects in detail. I would like you to go over it. And then a thing that is not mentioned here, but I would like you to mention, is that you have to recognize, to be a critical reader, that any text that you read is somebody's idea, and which means that that idea will have human issues, will have oversights, will have assumptions. So looking for those assumptions can also sometimes help. For example, the author is saying, like Mary Pauline, for example, she is, by assuming that her audience is American, she is assuming that you would understand all the things she is saying and you are on the same page. All right, so what does this insight into her her ideology or her ideas give you a new concept or a new idea to talk about? What about those people who disagree? What about those people who think, no, this is not a problem, this is not how we approach it? Will there be other opinions? Will there be other points of view? And if there are, what would be their goal? What would be their focus? So my point is, understanding that a text is somebody's idea is very essential to being a critical reader, and in order to understand and analyze their rhetoric, because then you can look at their writing and say, well, these are the techniques they're using, these are the problems with it, and I'm not saying evaluate it, but simply understand it. Remember, understand it for insight, understand it for a better understanding of what a text can say and mean, and how it can give you ideas for your own writing. All right. Moving on, I would like you to think about also the kind of examples she uses. Anne Mary Pauline uses a lot of factual information. She uses journal examples, she uses medical examples, she uses papers, she uses a lot of things. All right, and every single thing she says, she supports with facts, and then she gives her own comment about it. So there is a pattern, you see, a pattern to her paper, and I would like you to think of it as a rhetorical strategy that she employs, which is very important. Lastly, I would say for this week, in the first activity where you have to come up with a topic, I think it's a very, very interesting activity for you, because you can select anything, literally anything. You can talk about horror films, you can talk about Halloween costumes, or stitching, or cooking, or football, or anything at all. As long as you can find a topic you can actually discuss, as long as you can think about what are the current debates about it, what are people saying about it. And in today's very, very volatile political and social rights climate right now in the country, I have added a picture in your slides for analysis, which if you want, you don't have to write anything for it, but just for your own self, look at the picture and see, for example, how that picture reflects, let's say, what is happening in the country now, right? With Black Lives Matter, with lack of equal opportunity, with systemic racism. Now, what the picture depicts and how the picture reflects the ideas. The reason I've added a picture is because I didn't want to give you another thing to read. I want you to just look at that picture and try and see how many ideas can you generate from it. How many things can you discuss about it? What are the topics that come to your mind from it? So it will be an activity. Just give yourself like 5 to 10 minutes and jot those things down on a piece of paper for your own self, for your own practice, and then move on to finding a topic that you would like to discuss for this week's activity, and then this week's discussion and reflection. I hope you enjoy the readings. I am really liking whatever you have written so far. So yes, keep the good work coming, and best of luck for this week. Thank you.